And we're live.
What are we talking about today?
Welcome back to LOOPcast.
Mercer.
Guess who's back? Back again. Josh Mercer, Oracle of Petoskey. You were missed. How are you doing?
Thank you, brother.
How you feeling?
Still recovering. I mean, you know, I dropped off my daughter at the University of Mary, and they start school late. So her drop-in, move-in date was Saturday. And then they had a little reception for the parents and stuff. My wife went to that. I took the other kids to the pool. Then Sunday they had mass, for the parents and everyone else. And I got to say, I mean, I'd already experienced the University of Mary. And so it was nice for my wife to get to understand what it's like at this community. And so at the mass, the chaplain of the school, not the president, the chaplain, Father Dominic Boak, or how you say his name, he gives this homily, and it was just so righteous. I actually was searching all morning to see if they had posted the link online, but I couldn't find it. But he just had a great way of bursting all these kind of bubbles, like all the what young people dream of what college is, to remove the shackles of what your parents put on you and to go try new things. Because alcoholism isn't new. Chlamydia, it's not new. And the parents were just like roaring. It was just like so from this guy was just so on, just slaying these, I mean, everyone builds it up so much in our culture.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I can't wait to get to college. I can be 4 years of being an idiot and indulging in every sin. And it's like, it's not new. There's nothing new under the sun. Go read Genesis, the book of Genesis. There's so much stuff in there. Like, it's not like this has ever happened before. Come on. But we're going to try our best to make it a good environment. And also, but the parents just loved it. And I'm like, okay, how's this going to land? Right.
Yeah.
And I was looking around and the students were laughing and my daughter was like, that was fire. That was so good. It wasn't like wagging the finger and preaching at him. This is the whole thing. I think he's, Father Dominic, he's probably if he's not a Gen X, he's probably a millennial or whatever. He's not for the, and this is not against the boomers. I'm not trying to take a knock at boomers. Okay. But I just love the fact that he was like, I'm not going to wave my finger and scold you. He's just going to be like, he's just going to mock the stupidity of sin. And it was just so refreshing. It's one of my themes, Midwest self-confidence. And man, the University of Mary in North Dakota, they've got it. A great school, just like there's several other good schools out there, but I want to give my little tip of the cap there.
Okay, looks like we got some here in the chat. Let's see. Yep, we do have someone in the chat from North Dakota. What up, UMary? UMary grad, Bismarck, North Dakota. What's up, Isaac? But yeah, join us live in the chat. It's more fun. 11 a.m. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Thank you to everyone in the chat now. Good morning, everyone. Had a lot of fun last week with the fill-ins for Josh, but we actually had someone say that it was refreshing to hear Erica talk. So I think with two people not going as hard on Erica, it was fun. I also, Josh, I did relate to you last week. We did a sports draft. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I mean, if I'm not on the show, I don't watch it. So
respect. Okay. Oh no, we just lost Erica. That's not good. So yeah, but I felt like you because we were doing this draft and I picked The Sandlot, which Josh, you have strong thoughts on The Sandlot?
Oh, I love The Sandlot.
Okay, thank you. It was almost as if I picked like the worst sports movie of all time to Brian. Like Brian thought that was a terrible pick. And then I was getting exonerated in the comments by
Brian's wrong.
Yeah, thank you.
There's one scene in there that I find annoying is that they, where they uncover, a Playboy magazine or whatever. So I always have to skip that scene.
Yeah.
I tell my boys like, okay, this is just stupid. But with the exception of that, which is noxious, but the rest of the movie is like is total nostalgia in the best sense of the word. Like, what boy doesn't want to grow up with a neighborhood with a bunch of boys and playing baseball all day? Like, I would have dreamed of that. In fact, actually, interestingly enough, I actually never saw the movie when I was a kid. It came out when I was like 16 or whatever, and so I thought, oh, this is a movie for little kids. And someone in college is like, dude, you haven't seen it? Are you an idiot? It's awesome. You got to go watch it. So I eventually did, and I loved it. And my kids all watch it all the time. But the thing I thought, was kind of interesting about it is that the fact that my neighborhood I grew up in, which is a very suburban neighborhood, lots of houses, but there was like no one with kids. No one was having any children. And I'm like, what is going on? And I mean, I would have loved to have played baseball with a bunch of neighborhood kids, but I was born in 1977. And I remember 20 years later, as I'm looking at, first started out as a little reporter for the National Catholic Register, I was looking at birth rates. And it was just like you saw the birth rate, it was super high in the 50s, 60s, and then the pill, and then abortion, 73. And then by the time I was born in 77, it tanked. And I'm like, well, no wonder there was no one in my neighborhood. It was a neighborhood that there should have been kids at every other house, and there was no one my age. And it's like, gosh, this is like, it's like the worst thing in the world. You have tons of neighbors, but no one your age. Like I hated it. So that's like what kind of made me into being like a pro-life, intentional, pro-natalist Catholic.
Oh, Erica's Wi-Fi is really bad. But yeah, so if you go to the screen share here, I got the comments. I felt like I was going through the comments. Everyone's like, the LOOPcast is a classic. Pogo is robbed. And so this podcast continues to just be an experience of me continually, slowly turning into Josh Mercer over time. And I'm not sure how I feel about that completely.
Hey, I don't have any problem seeing when Brian's wrong. So
cool. So
there's only two people in his life who can tell him he's wrong, I guess. It's Sarah and me. No, I'm kidding.
Cool. So we're having trouble again with Erica. This is like becoming the worst theme of the show. And we had tried fixes, I have meetings. I'm not sure what's going on. But if we just move into the show, hopefully Eric can get back. I guess worst comes worst, we can hop over to the other platform. But you also visited a holy site on your way back. I saw that was an insider, Josh. What were you doing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people know about this, but there is actually an approved apparition site in the United States. The Blessed Virgin Mary visited in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, like in 1859, this young girl named Adele, and spoke to her and said and encouraged her to teach the youth in her area and the people there the faith, because they just weren't catechized that well. And so she did, and she eventually started a school. Well, and she actually asked Mary, like, well, how can I do this? She was, very young. And Mary said, go and fear nothing, for I'm with you. And I just love that. It's like, okay, so like, you've got Mary on your side, let's go. And she starts a school, and they're teaching the youth in the area all the faith. And then everyone knows about the Great Chicago Fire, but there's the Forgotten Fire, which happened at the same time in Wisconsin, and torched well over 1 million acres of land, killed 1,200 people. And everyone was freaked out. And so what did they do? They started going towards the chapel where, Mary had visited Adele. And they all gathered in the chapel, and the fires had come right up to the gates of the church. And and you could just feel the heat and hear the roaring of the fire. And everyone was freaked out. And everyone's inside praying. And then what happens? The heavens open up and a downpour of rain. And everyone was saved in the church.
Wow.
So it's just kind of a cool thing. I would encourage people to go visit it. It's called Our Lady of Champion, because it's in a small little hamlet, farm town of Champion, Wisconsin, just outside of Green Bay. Even though I don't like the Packers, I like visiting.
Our Lady did not object to visiting Packer territory, apparently.
I mean, of course, this is an opportunity for every Catholic Green Bay Packer fan to rub it in my face and say, yeah, no, of course, there's going to be a champion in Green Bay.
Yeah.
I get that, whatever. But anyway, of course, I went there and I prayed, and in a special way, if I just ask the audience, I out of privacy, I'm not going to mention the reason, but a good friend of ours has a very special intention I'd like everyone to pray for and keep that close to their heart. So someone that we really care a lot about is going through a real tough time. And so, again, out of respect and privacy, We'll just say it's a very special intention. If you could go to Our Lady, and that's obviously, I went there to pray for everyone with CatholicVote and with the Loop. But check it out, Our Lady of Champion. It's in the Northwoods of Wisconsin, just a little bit. It's quick drive from Green Bay. So
yeah, can't emphasize enough if everyone could just take a few minutes today and just pray for special intention. Someone very close to all of us. I'd really appreciate that. I have to second that. So we have a couple different directions we could go today. One involves World War II.
Yes.
So I say,
is that too online? I don't know.
Well, we're about to find out, brother. So
we're gonna take it to the people.
So here's just to set up what happened. I'm gonna try my best, okay? And as soon as I saw the story, I got excited because Erica's very public about her fascination with World War II, and we'll see if Josh is interested. I'm not sure. So I started seeing things like this yesterday, and I'm not sure if anyone else in the chat saw it as well. Here's a headline: Tucker Carlson starstruck by historian who calls Churchill, not Hitler, the chief villain of World War II and casts Holocaust as accident. Now, I saw a lot of people like this, and I figured that there's got to be more to this. And sure enough, I found there was more. So the guy that Tucker brought on his show, his name, first name Daryl, right? It's Daryl something.
Yep,
he goes by Martyr Made. Martyr Made is his account. He became really popular for his series that he made on Zionism, the origins of Zionism and then the conflict of Palestine and Israel. And he does these long 3-hour podcasts. He reads a ton. And that was kind of funny. People are saying he's not a historian. He just reads a lot of books. I was like, oh, what do you think historians do? Question mark.
That's kind of what a historian is.
Yeah, it's like they can't teleport back in time. Like maybe that'd be cool if they could. But anyway, Tucker brings him on and he offers a critique and kind of being a little bit of a instigator, saying that he believes that Winston Churchill actually is one of the villains of World War II and offers a couple reasons as to why he thought why. What definitely struck me in the interview was he at no point did he actually platform Nazism. Never did he say it was a good thing. Never did he say Hitler was a good guy. He just offered that Churchill maybe was a bit of a warmonger. And so to see this kind of response online was surprising to me. Yeah, less of a saint, correct. And it struck me as a casual observer who had people say, hey, go look into Martyr Made. He has good stuff. He, in the episode, predicted there would be this kind of reaction. And he spoke about this mythos that there's a narrative about World War II that has been told by the victors. That's very important, almost taken as like a religious thing. You can't criticize it in Europe legally in a lot of ways. And there's ways to police it in the United States. And that because so much of our foreign policy is built upon the mythos that of what happened in World War II is Hitler was a bloodthirsty Jew hater who was irrational, didn't think at all, and that America was the moral good guys. No one in the Allies did anything wrong, and therefore, let's go bomb Iraq.
Yeah, and just to be super clear, Tom, when you say mythos, you're not saying like fake news, because people hear the word myth, I think, and it sets them off into like, oh, you're saying this is like a fake story. Yeah. That's not actually what you're saying. It's that, there's a mythos is like a national story that is told, and
it's the narrative.
The narrative, and narratives can be true. Okay, they can be simplified, they can be complicated. But what Daryl Cooper is saying here to Tucker is that these are really mythos, and how we tell the story of us is really, really important. And he's not saying that like mythos is just like, oh, it's the story of Zeus, so it's just sort of like a children's entertainment thing here. I just wanted to clarify that because I think people hear myth and they're like, wait, Tom's saying that it's a myth that Hitler was bad, which isn't what you're saying at all.
Right. Thank you. And I want to be very clear. Like, I'm a casual observer. Erica's much more learned and Josh is much more learned on World War II and everything involved. It was more striking to me to see such a hysterical reaction to an interview by all the same people that say, don't trust media, criticize everything, think freely, but then are essentially doing the opposite here. So I wanted to say, I watched the full interview. Erica, I know I literally made you do it because I was like, I know you love World War II. What was your take on the whole thing? I'm curious.
Yeah. So again, like I started watching it because you sent it to me. I didn't see all of the backlash about it and everything. And he starts off, he goes through actually like his story of is it Jonestown or Jonesboro? The drink the Kool-Aid, right? Which was an interesting way to start.
Jonestown,
yeah. That
Indiana
was it.
boy.
Yeah. And then he gets into the Churchill thing about, a third of the way into the interview. And I watched it because I'm I'm interested in history. I love World War II, as you all know, and I love alternative takes that complicate history because, I mean, we all grow up, and in elementary school, hopefully, if we have really good parents and teachers, we will learn, George Washington, the good guy, and, the British bad guys. And then you learn Hitler, bad guy, and, Churchill, good guy. And that's how you learn it as a child. And then as you grow up, you learn like more people have backstories. And I thought Daryl made a really important point when he said he's talking about guys like the Jonestown dude when he's talking about guys like Churchill. He's like, all of them were once 3 years old. They were all once really little innocent children. And the interesting question is, how do we all start with the same human nature, the same sort of tabula rasa, if you will, and get to the point where some of us are making really, really evil, bad decisions, and others are doing heroic deeds, and most of us are a mixture somewhere in between. So I think that my two reactions would be, I don't agree with him on everything. I think he gets it wrong what Hitler's intentions were. I think he's too soft on that. He made the point that, okay, well, Hitler was trying to make peace all through 1940, the fall of 1940. And so, Churchill was the one who was really pushing to keep the war going in 1940. Hitler wanted to stop once he got his territory. I disagree with that because I don't think it accounts for the fact that Hitler, this is getting into the weeds, but it doesn't account for the fact that Hitler actually invaded Great Britain. He took over and occupied the Channel Islands early in in June of 1940. So he wasn't exactly like, I don't want to fight you, Britain. He was actually occupying British territory. Yeah. I think Daryl really needs to address that issue before he's like, Hitler really wanted to stay out. I thought he missed that point. But the second thing was that he offered hard evidence and documentation for his claims. He has done tons of reading. You just listen to the books that he's read. You look at the lists on his podcast, and you're like, the guy's done his research. And then the people who are reacting against him, they're just like, oh, he said that, Zionism's bad. He's anti-Semitic. He said that Hitler was like good. And they just didn't listen to the interview, right? They just didn't listen. And I would love to see.
It's a response of, how dare you say that? That's wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you said, that's the wrong helpful, thing. Actually. Maybe he uncovered some evidence that he couldn't explain with our, accepted narrative. And so he's offering a way that would account for his evidence. And the way to tell him he's wrong is to go find more evidence and be like, did you consider this? Like, Hitler occupied the Channel Islands and was shipping Jews out of British territory in the fall of 1940 as he's trying to make peace with Britain. Like, that would be evidence to me that Daryl would find compelling. But just to go on Twitter and go off about how Tucker's gone mad, he only listens to people like Candace. Like, Daryl Cooper was not even close to Candace Owens level craziness here. Not even close. So, because I saw the reactions online, I went back and I rewatched parts of the interview. It's like, did I miss something? Was he crazy? Come on, guys.
No, and to your point, it doesn't feel helpful, and it almost kind of feels like a self-fulfilling prophecy that I see. I see this kind of problem elsewhere. It's like you're basically trying your best to turn people into what you're accusing them of because you're not, adding nuance and trying to add context and trying to educate. You're just doing exactly what Josh said of like pointing fingers, you're evil, no one should listen to you. And then guess what? When I saw that reaction, I was like, now I have to listen to this interview because I don't like when people tell me what I should or should not listen to. And then I can use my own brain to form my opinion on whether or not this. I think he had some very interesting critiques of Winston Churchill. It's funny. People are saying, oh, no one's ever said this. It's a pretty common alt criticism of warmongering Winston Churchill. And then the most interesting thing I saw in this, and it factors into a lot of what they're talking about, a lot of what we talk about on here too, is Americans actually are too young to even. So this French guy comes in, he's like, both sides are wrong. And I just have to read this thread. I thought it was fascinating because it's hard as Americans to kind of understand, like, and they talked about this in the interview as well. Like, if England completely gets, wiped out by immigrants or whatever, all of a sudden it's majority non-English. Like, there's nowhere else for England to go. Like England as a country, as a people, have been around for over pretty much 1,000 years. That's their homeland. And then so this guy Pascal on Twitter gave a really interesting response. He said, "For those wondering, yes, it's true."
I love that guy.
It's for those wondering, yes, it's true and denied by no historian of the period that June 1940 Hitler made a sincere offer of peace and rapprochement to Great Britain. Even apart from the fact that after Munich and everything else, it was quite rational to doubt Hitler's sincerity, there is a simpler and much more fundamental reason why neither Winston Churchill nor any other prime minister of the United Kingdom could have taken his offer. Ever since it emerged as a coherent state, the overriding security imperative of the British government has been to prevent at all costs the appearance of a hegemonic power on the European continent. Take it from a Frenchman. Us and our cousins fought centuries of war, literally centuries of war because of this. They fought us in the 100 Years' War. They fought us in the 30 Years' War. They fought us in the 9 Years' War. They fought us in the War of Spanish Succession, during which Lord Marlborough, of whom Churchill was a direct descendant and biographer, and French armies tore up half of Germany chasing each other. They fought us in the War of Austrian Succession. We fought them in the War of American Independence. And of course, they fought us in the Revolutionary War and Napoleonic Wars, 25 years of almost uninterrupted war. American, even as history nerds, don't understand history because they are too young. History is the unfolding over centuries and millennia of the inner logic of nations and geography. History was in Churchill's blood, quite literally in his bones. He understood perfectly well that every British statesman understood in June 1940, which was the fall of France had turned Germany into an existential enemy of the British Empire. For a small island nation that imports most of its food, division on the European continent is a matter of survival in the way that anti-nomad walls were a matter of survival for any Chinese empire. Churchill never would have done it. Chamberlain never would have done it. No plausible occupant of Churchill's seat would have done it. And if he had, he would have been immediately overthrown by Parliament and replaced by, well, Churchill. The alt history that Buchanan and others fantasized about was never, ever going to happen. Frenchman from the clouds.
Yeah, I love that. I love when people point out how young we are, like as Americans. And I think Daryl made the point too this was earlier in the discussion with Tucker, that part of the problem of even looking at World War II for anyone, Europeans or Americans, is that it's only 80 years ago.
Yeah.
And in the vast swaths of history, it's kind of like trying to understand how we got here from the sexual revolution. You have to keep going back farther and farther and farther, because human history doesn't reveal itself, and like the meaning of events in human history don't reveal themselves fully in 50 years, in 80 years, even in 100 years. And so we're just starting to understand what World War I did to Europe and did to Western Civ now 100 years later. And if you'd like to hear more about that, can I plug my interview with Peter Wolfgang on Edify? Head over to Edify. We talked about this very issue of where did everything go crazy in Europe? Why is Europe on fire right now? And Peter Wolfgang, he goes right back to World War I. And then I was like, we really have to go back further. He's like, yeah, how about like Gnosticism? So we get into it. If you're a history nerd, you'll really enjoy the discussion. Peter Wolfgang over on Edify this week.
It all starts with the Protestants.
Check him out.
Yeah, that's
Did
probably.
you like my little commercial there?
I liked your commercial, and this does make me want to start a history podcast because, ironically, I feel like this kind of reignited a desire in me to just go back and just dig in. And I did start listening.
That was my reaction to the interview. I was like, Todd, I have a new career. I'm going to start a history podcast.
So I hope that the Loopcasters indulge us here at a little bit of a history conversation. I know we usually focus on current events, but I hope that when we go home, like this is what I'm looking at. This is what I'm interested in. And I ironically, I brought a new perspective to a lot of, I feel like I'm constantly gaining new perspective. I guess that's part of being human. But what he was suggesting that we do is, like you said, Erica, of like, think about people as a 3-year-old and what happens to them to make them into the person that they were and make the decisions that they made. And I'm like, if we look at even people around us with that kind of perspective and empathy, I feel like that would actually cause less war. The more that I think about it, it would cause less division. You could at least try to understand where other people are coming from. And I was like, I pray this prayer to St. Joseph the Worker Prayer every morning. And it starts with like sincerity of intention as I think one word in it. And I'm like, with so many bad faith actors, I guess it's almost hard for me to do that. But I don't know. This podcast was just a good reminder of like, yeah, it is important to understand where people are coming from so that you can at least formulate a good response. We're done with the history talk. Josh looks so bored. So we
Thanks,
need to get
Josh.
into something a little bit more
I'm
Josh
not for it. I
flavored.
love that.
Aw.
Cool. So we have a little bit of poll talk now. I know polls are all the rage these days. So latest Nate Silver poll. We have chances of winning Trump at 56.7%, highest since 731, and Harris at 43%. It does appear, and then they go into the swing states here. It appears as though the kind of romantic post-DNC bump has died or it no longer exists. Josh,
And there never really was much of one, if we want to be honest. I don't
was
know.
this
that's
surprising to you?
actually, there's been a lot of talk about this. It's not just that she doesn't have a big bump. I mean, Trump didn't have a big bump after his convention speech either. Neither did Biden and Trump in 2020. Neither did Hillary and Trump in 2016. Because we're in a new era. It's basically the internet, right? We have access to the candidates in multiple different ways. Because if you think about it, that's one thing that's been good about the internet is that you can get more election coverage. Because before, in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, whatever, it was how much ever the national news wanted to cover it, and they would cover it and filter it their own way. But now people have access to watch a candidate give a speech, a whole 1 hour speech online. They can go watch it. They can listen to it. They can see the rally. They can hear, each of these candidates talk. And then the candidates and campaigns can have direct communication with their with the voters through email and social media. And so I feel like everyone sort of knows each of the two teams' arguments out there. So the ability I hadn't heard that. That's a great argument. You're not going to get this big post-convention bump anymore. It's just a new world. So, you put up those numbers. So if you look at that.
I could do it again.
Do it.
What is he saying? That there's a 56% chance that Trump's going to, 57 almost, that he's going to win the Electoral College and win the presidency. Yeah. I mean, if he's at Arizona is at 67%, Georgia at 64, North Carolina, even Nevada's high 50s, and Pennsylvania. Yeah. I mean, that's.
And Michigan's like a 2% swing.
We'll see about that. I think Michigan's going to go red, but to me, again, I kind of look at, these are important things to look at. He's talking about the chances of winning on each of these states, not where the candidates are polling, of course.
Right.
And that's an important thing to remember. That's why North Carolina is at 70%, because it's a stubborn state. It's like one of those states that just Democrats keep wishing it'll go their way, and it's not gonna. If you look at the states, though, I do feel like, again, look at the top lines. So if you go to Real Clear Polling, they do the average of all the different polls. And I think Harris is at like 1.5% lead in the average of polling. Well, Biden barely won, right?
Right.
I mean, I'm not getting into the voter fraud thing. I'm just look at the totals, let's say, okay? What he won Arizona, Wisconsin, and Georgia by a sliver. If those votes had gone the other way, if a few more Catholics had come out and registered to vote and voted, easily could have gone the other way. Trump could have been president the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that's just understand where we're at. Biden at this time, 4 years ago, was leading by 7%. So if Kamala is leading by 1.5, that means Trump has improved his position by 5.5% points, not just percent, really. 5.5 points. That's good.
Josh, did you see Trump on Lex Fridman?
I saw that he'd been on that interview. I didn't get a chance to get to it yet.
I believe I saw that JD Vance has been on like 90 plus interviews.
94.
94 interviews.
On the Morning Wire this morning. Yeah,
he
said 94 interviews.
94
JD
interviews.
Vance has?
Yeah, JD Vance has been on 94 interviews.
Combination.
Come on to the Loopcast, brother.
They'd be a little bit more friendly than the places.
Who's got two thumbs and endorsed your campaign when you're in the primary, huh? Come on.
Look, and then there's
remember
the iconic picture of him and Brian that I took at the Columbus party. But Erica, Yes. Well, we don't need to, I don't need to talk about that. Erica, you saw the Lex Fridman interview. First off,
I did.
Lex Fridman is such a character. Like, he's just so funny listening to this kind of slow talking dude with a Russian accent ask Trump some good questions, I have to say, and much more interesting than anything that's ever been asked to Kamala Harris. So I hope she goes on. But what was your impressions of that interview?
Yeah, I enjoyed it. So I've seen quite a few Lex Fridmans. My husband's a huge fan, Lex Fridman podcast. And I thought that Lex was not as comfortable interviewing as he has been with some other characters. I enjoyed it very much, though, because I think the slow talk and the tougher questions, I think Trump was enjoying himself too, and you could tell. I didn't really learn anything new about Trump, except that if he is elected, he will release all of the UFO documentation.
And
those of you who know Lex Fridman know that he's a little obsessed with the UFO question.
And the Epstein logs, though, too.
Yeah, yeah. And the Epstein logs. And I was like, well, I mean, if we were expecting Trump to have another assassination attempt on him, that probably just sealed the deal. We'll be watching for that shortly, because he's like, yeah, I'll release the Epstein. Maybe I will. There are a lot of people on that island. But it was an enjoyable one. If you want a slower Trump interview with a really serious guy, I would recommend it. Again, I didn't learn anything new. But I enjoy watching both of them, and watching them together was fun.
I actually thought that format was really good for Trump, the kind of slow down, because he actually almost tone matched in a way, in a very Trump way, but he slowed down. And it makes me interesting think about all these debates over the microphones at the debate. I'm not sure if you saw Kamala Harris is now refighting. It's been the most annoying back and forth of you said you'd be there. You're going to be there. I was like, could we please just have a public debate for the people?
Yeah.
And then Trump agreed to the Biden request to have the microphones muted. And then Kamala's like, no, we want that.
Yep.
Right.
We don't want the muting. We want you to yell and scream and talk over it. They want to sell T-shirts. That's what it is.
Yeah. So this guy, Maze Moore, shout out Maze Moore. He does the best compilations on Twitter. He went back and compiled all the moments in the Mike Pence vice president debate from 2020 where Kamala said, excuse me, I'm talking. Excuse me, I'm talking. If you I remember it being bad. I thought back, it's 100 times worse than I remember it being. And I just could not even imagine being subjected to that again during this debate, because that would be happening. If there was no mic muting, every other, excuse me.
She's speaking to an important segment of the population who absolutely hates men.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They love that T-shirt, and they love those clips. They're like, girl boss, sticking it to the white dude. Yeah. That's
still waiting on a policy.
I'm talking here. Excuse me, Tom. I'm talking here.
Yeah. That's what I say to my kids when they won't settle down. And I do it to be obnoxious to get their attention.
Oh, do you do that? I'm counting down from one.
We listen to you, Erica. Shut up, Tom. We listen to you, Erica, because we consider you to be wise.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, Mercer. I really appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to revoke my privilege. Point of personal privilege.
Yes.
Okay, and what else we got today? Where do we even go from here? Here's the Twilight Zone before the Twilight Zone, okay? So I'm going to have to accept some cookies before you see this. Former aide to Kathy Hochul was a Chinese spy? What are we doing here? What are we doing here?
We're buying nice cars for the Chinese.
Authorities on Tuesday morning arrested Linda Sun and her husband, Christopher Hu.
Takeout.
Sun had served as an aide to current New York Governor Kathy Hochul and her predecessor, former Governor Andrew Cuomo, both Democrats. So she was indicted with acting as an undisclosed agent of the Chinese government. We need to bring McCarthy back.
Seriously, I'm like, maybe we could do with a little bit of McCarthyism at this point.
Hey-o.
And it's always the Democrats. Wasn't it the California dude, Adam Schiff, had the CCP in bed with him there?
No, Swalwell. Swalwell was...
Swalwell. Yeah. Swalwell.
I
mean, literally in bed with a spy.
Twilight Zone before the Twilight Zone.
Here's the thing, though, that's pretty terrifying about it, is that China plays the long game. They're not going to do a World War II style war against the United States. No. they funded all these like Confucius institutes all across these college campuses across the country. They were all just ways to get their spies through the United States, and they were buying land up by military bases. They were buying land up and down the Mississippi River, buying
farmland.
cell phone towers. They're compromising politicians left and right. Like, you mentioned Eric Swalwell, the New York governor. Think about all the technology they have, like with Temu and all these different apps. I mean, you just wonder if sometime we wake up 15 years from now and they just like flip a switch and all of a sudden everything we thought we could count on between our cell phones, the electric grid.
Did we talk about how
you should be worried?
Sorry,
Yeah.
excuse me, I'm speaking. Did we talk about how the Kamala Harris Joy campaign is Mao's words bring joy? Did we talk about that?
Oh my gosh. I don't think we did because we were off on Friday. Oh my gosh.
They were off on Friday, man. Do I have a tweet for you? So so you know how just bizarre and unsettling the whole joy thing is? And
Because it's not joyful. Yeah.
Because there's no joy, but they're saying you have to feel joy. So I was just doing some digging.
It's
I'm
about the vibes, man.
the vibes have been off. So I find this, I do a little bit of digging. Okay. Here's some other sayings for you. Quote, "We are warmed by Stalin's affection. Mao's words bring joy, strength through joy." That is Stalin, Mao, and Hitler, the big three.
That's right.
Read an interesting article about it. Basically, communists don't only want your policy fealty, they also make a demand on your emotions. And so that's why you see a lot of emotional language. And funny enough, it's a lot of big brother talk. So like paternalism, maternalism, the government takes care of you. Communism, AKA. What is Kamala's called Mamala?
I feel your pain.
Like there's a lot of, and Lex Fridman actually called him, he's like, you call Kamala a communist. Like I wouldn't consider a communist. He's like, people call you a fascist. He's like, well, it's like, when people are nasty. Yeah.
See, you weren't even in diapers before you were born, but was it the 92 campaign between Poppy Bush and Bill Clinton? And they had it was it's the cable TV news era. So they like, we're going to have a town hall. We're going to let American people ask questions. Like, oh, okay, that's nice. I mean, obviously somebody had to pick which person to ask the questions and what questions they were going to ask. So I'm sure, yeah. But the one guy gets up there, he's like, where are your, what are you going to, we are your children. You're the politicians. What are you going to do for us? And it's like, what the hell? I was only like 17 at the time, but I want to beat the shit out of my French to this guy.
Watch your language.
It's like,
this is a live show.
You are a U.S. citizen. You are an adult man. Grow a pair. Like the government is not your mommy and daddy. Like it just drives me crazy.
Yeah, it's a long way from Kennedy, right? Ask not what your country can do for you. That's a lot, like the opposite of the.
But then you got Drew Barrymore calling her Mamala.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, Drew. Oh,
that was tough.
Come on, people. I know. And this woman to be Mamala, like if you need a surrogate mother, Drew, why Kamala? The cackling Kamala, Comrade Kamala. That's Trump's new name for her is Comrade Kamala, which I appreciate. Did you see the Spamiflage story that just came out? So this came out. I put the link in here for you, Pogo, in the show notes. But this was an analyst group called Graphica in New York uncovered this story this week. They track online networks, and they broke the story of Spamiflage, which is the actual name, I am not making this up, of a Chinese disinformation group. And its sole purpose is to spread large amounts of seemingly unrelated content alongside disinformation. So they actually create online personalities, social media personalities, and they're run by the Chinese Communist Party to go into the United States social media platforms and sway voters one way or another, and to sow discord, to sow confusion, and to sow actual disinformation. I'm not just talking about like COVID vaccines here, but
just basically promote the Kamala Harris campaign every way.
Speaking of,
and Graphica said this is one of the world's largest covert online influence operations run by Chinese state actors, and it has become more aggressive in its efforts to infiltrate and sway U.S. political conversations ahead of the election. So when you're on Twitter, if you are on Twitter, watch out for the Chinese operatives there.
speaking of,
Well, I feel like you mentioned Twitter, so still called X or whatever. I call it Twitter, but
did you guys see this?
The Philadelphia Eagles.
It's a fake Philadelphia Eagles endorsement of Kamala Harris, and the Eagles were all mad about it.
And it's fake, yeah.
Yeah, speaking of disinfo, I just thought that was funny. Anyway, Josh, what were you saying?
Well, disinformation. I mean, that's the thing. Like, Kamala Harris says that, there are people, she said this a few years ago, and she's reiterated it this year as well. There are people that are spreading information through social media that is wrong, and they're just allowed to do it. It's like, what do you mean? They're allowed to do it? Like, it's something called the First Amendment, sister. We can say what we want to, and you can try to disagree with it. But this is an important point. I think Catholics really need to appreciate this, because I know there's been a lot of frustration with Trump on the IVF stuff, and I get it. And some people are like, oh, well, whatever, I can't vote for him. Look, I understand the arguments. The fact of the matter is, I look at what Kamala Harris would do to this country, and I am not going to give her any chance at getting at power, because, look, Robert Reich was the Secretary of Labor under Bill Clinton. He has called for Elon Musk to be arrested no less than 3 times. The guy is the world's smallest tyrant. He's like the 4 foot
literally the smallest.
Secretary.
Totally.
But Kamala believes the same thing. She thinks these social media companies that X, that allow you to share your opinions with other people, that's a problem. They love the news media because it's filtered.
Right.
And there's filtered access. Now, I remember thinking to myself, gosh, the entertainment media was the most BS media that there ever was, right? The entertainment media, these are the people that want to bring in Tom Cruise to talk about their latest movie, right? Or, here's Sydney Sweeney or whatever. They want to bring in all these stars. So they're never going to say anything that would attack anybody, right? Because they want to get those sit-down interviews. They want to get and they get the ratings, right? So they are the most, sycophantic media operation ever. And then the sports media would be kind of the next one over. I mean, they want to kind of rile things up, and they want to get, members of the Eagles yelling at members of the Giants and sell more tickets that way and all that kind of stuff. But they're gonna not be like totally in your face and aggressive. They want to sell product. They want the football star to get on the TV and to talk. You know what I'm saying? And I thought to myself, well, at least the news media is different. They're going to report what's new. They're the same way. They believe in the same they want access. So they want the guy from the FBI or the senator or whoever to give them information or to give them stories. They like to pretend like, oh, we're the fourth estate.
Right.
We're the vanguards of democracy.
Right.
Checks
If
and
you
balances.
really believed in free speech and you were the true vanguards of democracy, you would find it absolutely repellent that a major party candidate like Kamala Harris would call for the eradication of the First Amendment.
Right.
Kamala Harris should be in jail, not be running for president. She is despicable.
We had Schwaster in the chat just said rant in all caps. I think you paid off.
You got your Josh
We're
rant.
back, dude. We're
was
so
awesome.
back. Okay, I actually had a question that I wanted you to answer, Josh, because I've kind of heard of the American Solidarity Party and the idea of like a third party candidate. Obviously, RFK Jr. is big, but so email from Patrick. Would you all cover why Peter is or is not a good candidate? I watched this interview and have to say, like previous non-bipartisan candidates, it was quite refreshing. Why not provide more coverage on candidates like this over more Kamala coverage? And I've seen this sentiment a few different times of like frustration with both parties, so it's just refreshing to see something else. Josh, in general, what are your thoughts? I don't know if you've looked into the Solidarity Party or Peter Sonsky or third party.
I know Peter Sonsky, actually. I've met him a few times. He's a great guy. I love the guy. I'm not going to vote for Peter. I do believe actually in the two-party system. I actually like it. I mean, we could decide as a country we want to get rid of it and go to a parliamentary system where you'd have multiple different parties. I think that would be a bad choice. The two-party system, though, how you design your system will tell you what kind of politicians you will get. Okay, it's not like one system is going to suddenly give you a ton of freedom and another one will automatically give you tyranny or whatever. It's still the people with the authority trying to decide which politicians they want. But if you have a two-party system, everyone think, oh, that's terrible, that's flawed. No, actually, there's a logic to it. And the logic to it is you have to build coalitions where you're aspiring to get 51% of the people on your side. And so, it's difficult. So like pro-lifers get frustrated because they're like, well, I'm pro-life and every Republican I know is pro-life. Why is it that the Republican Party standard bearer is calling for IVF, which is a bad thing, and we need to rebuke him for it. And we are clear about that we do not want that to be expanded. We do not want taxpayers to have to pay for that. It's immoral. I'll shout that from the rooftops. But the fact of the matter is, if you have a two-party system, no matter what, if you have a two-party system or a five-party system, the chances are that if 70% of Americans think IVF is great, then chances are your president is going to think it's just fine, or at least not be against it. So like, there's a lot of work that we as pro-lifers have to do. I keep trying to remind people of this. Okay. We pro-lifers are a majority of the Republican Party, probably a very solid majority. Let's say 70% of Republicans are pro-life, but that means 30% of Republicans are indifferent on it, or even pro-choice. They don't really care that much. Now, I don't mean to offend Kristen Day. I've met her many times. She's a nice lady. She's head of Democrats for Life. Okay. Talk about a lonely job.
Yeah, seriously.
But she had made the point many times. I used to be a reporter for the National Catholic Register. I cover Democrats for Life. I give them as much coverage as I possibly could. And one of her talking points, maybe she doesn't say it anymore, but she used to say it a ton, 10, 15 years ago, is that 40%, she would say 40% of Democrats are pro-life. Okay, well, that's just not true. I'm sorry. 40% of Democrats might say, I would never abort my child. That might be true. But 40% of Democrats are not pro-life, not even close. If it were the truth, then Kansas and Ohio, we would have won both those states.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, if abortion came up for a ballot in Idaho, we would win. The pro-life side would win, precisely because there's so many Republicans and so many pro-lifers in that state that we'd actually have a majority. But no Democrats hardly, finding a Democrat who would actually vote pro-life on a constitutional amendment, yeah, they happen. Sure, but it's like finding, an albino zebra. It's just not common.
So or a woolly mammoth, because they're gone extinct. Yeah.
So I think we need to understand, yes, most Republicans are pro-life. However, most independents are not, and almost every Democrat is not. So we might be a majority of one political party, and we might try to wrestle that party to try to move our way on things. And a lot of them will be sympathetic because a lot of the lawmakers themselves represent districts that are a majority, the Republican. That's why they got elected, congressman or whatever. But the fact of the matter is, there are going to be those swing districts where, yikes, it might be 70% again in favor of abortion. So we have a lot of work to do. I try to remind people, the state of Florida is likely to, unfortunately, the polling number, we got to keep praying, we got to keep working, but the polling does not look good right now in Florida. It looks like the voters in Florida are actually going to legalize abortion.
And so, just to be clear, that's what Amendment 4 would do.
Amendment 4.
It would make it a part of the state
tell
constitution.
every Catholic we know to vote no and vote on 4 in Florida. But the thing is, it's entirely possible that we will wake up the day after the election and that the voters in Florida will have legalized abortion, have legalized marijuana, and they'll still have voted for Trump. And you're like, that doesn't make any sense, because most of the people listening to this podcast are against abortion, and they're probably not super happy about legalizing marijuana. Maybe they're a little bit indifferent. And you're like, how could it be that people hold these positions? It's like, because you know what? It's a big country out there, and there's a lot of people who have, unusual ideas.
Well, and I think too that we've talked about this as well. After Roe v. Wade, we had 50 years of abortion on demand without restrictions from a federal level. And so you don't just turn that around overnight and suddenly there's a switch and everyone understands, right?
It changed so many lives.
It did. And that 50 years also gave the pro-abortion side the upper hand in terms of sophistication politically, the control of the institutions. They have run very effective campaigns against or to get these amendments on ballots in states like Florida, like Ohio, like Kansas, to codify into state constitutions, basically Roe, right? Abortion on demand.
It's a $1 billion industry. Not
right,
only they make a lot of money killing babies, and then the taxpayers are giving them money because we have politicians who do that. I mean, we're fighting with both arms tied behind our back, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
It's the ultimate David and Goliath situation, right? In the pro-life movement right now. Kristen Hawkins, like, she can be pretty abrasive. I get it. Some people like her style, some people don't. But she has a really a good analysis, I think, over at Town Hall today. She's a yeah. What do we see? I like the abrasive. I get along with it.
Yeah, we house one of them ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah, and she makes the point that she says. The fight that we're in right now in terms of abortion throughout the states, we're fighting to keep our movement alive. We are facing an existential threat. If we have a Harris-Walz administration, there won't be a conversation anymore. We'll be back to Roe, but worse, right? We won't even have the conversation of, let's debate what this state will do and what that state will do and everything. So
does this all kind of get back? Sorry to interrupt because we run a little
fine.
bit low on time. All good. No, but is this sort of getting back to like the original question with Peter Sonsky? Is like, you guys both know him. Mm-hmm. Yes, the American Solidarity Party, to my knowledge, is 100% pro-life. But because of the two-party system and because we need to be effective in other areas, it would not be wise to throw your vote at him.
Again, the 100% pro-life, I mean, that's one of those things where actually the Republican Party platform was so awesome on paper from 1980, 84, 88, all the way through, like 2016 or whatever. And that's because the United States Supreme Court did not allow lawmakers to do anything on it, not just on the federal level, but on the state level. And so therefore you could put anything you want to do on paper. You could be as principled as you wanted to because you didn't actually have to face the voters.
Right.
Exactly.
There was no consequences. So you could do whatever you wanted to. That's the same thing with any other third party. Like, to me, that's why when you said, isn't it so cool and so brave that RFK Jr. was going on all these radio shows and podcasts? Like, what else is he going to do? It's not like he's going to get on CBS this morning. I mean, come on.
Hey, now.
It's like, well, gosh, he's got a lot of bravery.
Hey, no, that felt
so I'm not
trying
trying
personal.
to dog on Peter Sonsky. It's like, okay, so your platform is 100% perfect. Great. Why don't you get elected to the House and to the Senate and do some of these other things? I'm not against it. I'm not trying to take a crap on him. I admire him. I like him. Right. He's a good friend of mine. That's not, but to me, it's like look, it's easy to be super 100% idealistic when actually you're not really in control of anything.
Man in the arena.
That's right. The man in the arena.
That is, if anyone wonders, what I have printed back here.
I wanted to go to Teddy Roosevelt National Park, but it was an additional 4 hours of driving, and my family just
out in the Dakotas. Yeah.
Just couldn't do it.
Dude, I wish someone could start Tucker should interview someone on Teddy Roosevelt, because I would love to restart niche history discussions about.
He was against birth control, by the way.
Teddy Roosevelt.
Everyone was then, but
Teddy Roosevelt was interesting guy. I could talk for an entire show about Teddy Roosevelt. What a dog. Man in the arena. Okay, so now we have the Twilight Zone. Josh, you are back on the Twilight Zone. That's great. But we're going to go Erica first. Erica.
Yeah.
What do you got going?
I had to switch because we covered my Twilight Zone. So, because the whole world is Twilight Zone. Everything's Twilight Zone. So we're going to go with Venezuela because my brain was there all day yesterday. This is crazy. Not unexpected, but Americans need to be watching Venezuela. This is like playbook for what could be happening here. We covered it a little bit when the election was going on. It was pretty clear that the opposition leader to the socialist dictator Maduro had won, and he was being suppressed. And of course, the socialist government of Venezuela has denied the election results. They have threatened to cancel anyone who's questioning them. And now, at the behest of a public prosecutor who works for Maduro, because that's how they're structured, has had a judge issue an arrest warrant for the opposition candidate, Gonzalez. So not only did they changed. They have fraudulent election results. But anyone who is suggesting they're fraudulent is losing their social media platform, losing their radio shows, canceling any media that's questioning it. But they're also going to jail the man just because he ran against him, right? Just because he ran against Maduro. And the reason I'm bringing up Venezuela again is, again, it's a chilling story. And I think people forget that just 30 years ago, so in the 1990s, Venezuela was the fourth richest country in the world. They were on the lifestyle, quality of life, and free speech laws. I mean, it was on par with the United States. It's listed with the United States, Switzerland, the UK. Very wealthy country. And in 30 years, it has devolved into now 75% of the people live in poverty. 30% have fled the country, mostly for America, right? We have a lot of them here.
And taking over hotel complexes
taking
Aurora,
over
Colorado.
hotel complexes in Colorado.
That's
Those are the not
Twilight
nice
Zone.
Venezuelans. Kamala Venezuela. And it turns out that the FBI has been involved in the Venezuelan government and actually giving them tips for suppressing social media. So that was a great story this week as well. But the lesson, again, I've said this before, you can vote socialism in, but it is very hard to vote it out. So they bring in Hugo Chavez. But just listen to some of these platform points from Hugo Chavez. We've got, he did nationalization of vast swaths of the economy, healthcare, and social welfare. Oh, that sounds familiar. Oh, wait. He also introduced price controls on food and oil. Oh, wait. Didn't we just hear that last week? We did. Suppression of protests.
Free college.
Insurrections, right? Free college for everyone. And heavy-handed government pressure on all media sources. All of this, like, we are facing this choice here. We have seen the playbook. Will it look exactly the same? No.
Let me just reemphasize your point.
I'm speaking.
To bring in communism, you can use ballots, but to get out of communism, you need bullets.
Yep.
If I hear about if I have to hear another speech about the United States respecting democracy and other nations' sovereignty, and then I cannot hear about the United States being involved in another color revolution across the world. I'm so tired of it. It's like, it makes me so mad to get the dumb lectures from our leaders that claim to care about this, and they meddle in every country's election possible. It's like they're finding new countries to go meddle in their elections. It's insane.
This is what world powers do, right? This is what they do. So
we should
they're not
be
different.
tempted to do. If I'm being a little honest.
What? You're
if
chill
Josh
with
was
that?
in charge.
I'm so
I would be
tired
tempted.
of it.
Hold on,
Mercer
Tom.
land.
I would be tempted. Invade the United Kingdom, send all of the invaders away, reestablish free speech in that place, and have England be a colony of the United States. It'd just be kind of a nice little button, you know?
Closure, historical symmetry.
There you
It would
go.
be beautiful.
I said I'm tempted. I didn't say I'd do it, but I'm tempted.
Yeah. I just
Okay, so let me do my Twilight Zone.
All right, go for it. Go for it.
I put the link in there for the video. Here, I've considered, in doing the loop,
Oh,
I
this is so
consider
good.
that's my life work, is to try to educate Americans, and especially Catholics, obviously, media awareness, to understand how the media is distorting things. Okay. But a second thing I really care a lot about, honestly, is just helping people understand basic economics and basic politics too, civics, right? So economics. Inflation. People are like, what is going on with inflation? I don't understand. And like, remember I did a couple episodes ago before I left, it's like, the one lady is like, everyone tells me this is the best economy ever, but why are prices going up? Can someone just like explain this to me in crayon? And there's like, okay, well, let's say you're 200 pounds and the next year you're 205 pounds. The next year you're 220 pounds. And the next year you're only 222. Like, you've only gone up a little bit, but so that it's good. Like, no, you're still growing. Like, that's the problem.
You're still obese.
Yeah, and trust me, I know about that. The battle of the bulge continues. But this is a clip where the opposition leader in Canada, he's not conservative by American standards, because it's a whole other story in Canada. But
Yeah.
I like this guy, and I hope he wins in 2025. And here is Pierre.
You're part of the.
He's asked about inflation.
Here we go.
What are the steps that need to be taken to fix the damages done to inflation?
First and foremost, stop the overspending. Inflation, high taxes, deficits, high interest rates are all symptoms. The disease is overspending. When governments spend too much money, there's only three ways to get it. One is to raise your taxes. The other is to borrow, which means that they'll tax you more later on. And the third way is to print money. Now, printing money seems like a painless way to pay for things, but
It's not.
it's very simple. If you have 10 apples and $10 in the economy, it's a bucket apple. If you double the number of dollars in the economy to 20, you still only have 10 apples. You're not twice as rich. It's just that each apple costs twice as much. And that is a tax on the working people because it chews up the purchasing power of your paycheck, only to pay for excessive government spending, and it balloons the asset values of the billionaires. So it's a real transfer from the have-nots to the have-yots.
Yes.
Inflation is the worst and most immoral tax. It always results from government creating cash. Our government has created about $700 billion of cash in the last 3 years. So we used to have $1.8 trillion of bills, coins, and bank deposits. That was about 3-4 years ago. Now it's up to 2.5 trillion. So that's extra cash, but the economy has only grown by 4%. So the real things in the economy have only grown by 4%. The cash has grown by 40. So the money supply is growing 10 times faster than the stuff money buys, which creates a bidding war, and that's what's driving up inflation. We have to cap government spending with a dollar-for-dollar law that requires my ministers find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending, so that they go into their departments, find the waste and mismanagement. They want to spend more here, they have to spend less there, or get a bargain here and there to bring both under budget. Then and only then will we stop the money printing, borrowing, and overtaxation.
That is
So good.
phenomenal. So someone
like,
needs
I
to
can
get that clip
understand
to
that.
Trump, because Trump's a businessman too. He could explain that in his own way to voters. That'd be great.
Can I get something off my chest?
Go for it.
One of my biggest pet peeves is when people take videos that would be good on their own and add like dumb music under it. Like why did that need the music? Like that was a compelling enough clip. I would have watched it all the way through.
It was
I
a
don't
little
need this
distracting.
bizarre violin music underneath a good point. Good points talk for themselves. There it is. I'm done. Josh, sorry. Do you have anything else?
But so many good clips in that. Great explanation. Then he goes, talked about how it hurts the working poor, also the people on fixed incomes, but the people with assets, they just, they're better off.
Right.
And he goes, it's the have-nots and the have-yots.
Yeah, that was a bar.
That was
a bar.
awesome.
Baller, dude.
Yeah,
I'm going to use that.
He knew he ate with that
And
one.
I'm with
no
the
question.
Ariel. I like the music. I don't care.
Nah, that's just one of my pet peeves. I see it all
don't
over
care.
social media. It's annoying.
Josh, did you just describe yourself as ethereal?
No, I said I agree with Ariel.
Oh, I was like, sorry,
In the
I have
chat,
a
girl.
terrible head cold.
Can
and
someone
I'm like-
AI Josh is ethereal? Just like put
can't
in an
hear very
AI
well.
prompt. Josh Mercer
I got
ethereal.
my fans. I got to show my fans the love and respect.
Got it.
I want an AI edit of Josh is ethereal. That would be so funny. Okay, so mine actually dovetails in quite nicely with this, Josh. So social media trends. Looks like TikTokers have found an infinite money glitch in Chase Bank, and discovering it comes as a huge cost. Now, basically, they didn't discover something new. It's called check kiting, and it's check fraud, which has been around
illegal
since the beginning of checks. So basically, they go to these ATMs or whatever, and they just keep cashing these checks and getting quote unquote free money. And the Twilight Zone about this, and quite possibly my favorite part of the story is, well, there's two things. One, they discovered it, so they posted it online to an account that is public. So not the smartest thing I've ever heard. And then other people figuring it out. The worst part about it, though, is you're check kiting on your own account that you had to set up with Chase Bank. So pretty quickly, Chase found out who's responsible for this because they looked at people's accounts and they're like, oh, this person took out 40 grand. Like, this is just like, who conceived this idea that this would be good and then was dumb enough to post it and then also to do it on an account that is there. So very quickly, like I saw someone did, look at this. This guy posted all of a sudden they started getting hit with negative balances, obviously, because they're fraudulently pulling out money. Now all of a sudden they owe $31,000 back.
Oh
I mean, people were just taking money and like throwing it in the air in Queens. And because they just were able to get them out of ATMs, like, this is just one of those, like, what were we thinking, guys?
Oh my gosh.
You didn't discover infinite money glitch. This isn't Grand Theft Auto. Life is not a video game. And it just, there's so many parts of social media where I'm like, I know more about people than I ever wanted to know. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you don't need to post everything, especially when you're doing check fraud. Would say up there.
Well, it's like when you start to understand that people don't understand things that you understood to be basic.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's actually kind of funny, like the video of like 10 years ago or whatever, like the guy's like telling his girlfriend, like, okay, I'm going to cut up the pizza. How many slices should we do it 8 or should we do 12? It's like, oh, 8. I can't eat 12. I'm not a pig. It's like,
it's the same.
Right.
how many do you want? 8 or 12? Like 8. I can't eat 12. I'm not a pig. It's like, it's the same bloody pizza, girl. It doesn't matter. Hey, but you're just laughing about this, and then you realize this person's a voter too. It's painful.
And they vote.
You know what? That would make a great next draft episode, is things that you thought were normal until someone else told you it wasn't normal. Because everyone has those, funny. Right? Everyone has those.
I would feel more in my element with that draft. Can I be frank? Than sports movies?
You can be frank. That I would, I don't want to speak for the audience, but I felt like that came across, Erica, and much respect to you for even just humoring us by taking part in that, even though Brian has terrible opinions on sports movies. But next draft, maybe that becomes our next draft. I would love to hear if anyone could email me with funny stories.
That might be harder than you think, though.
I think it'd be harder than you think, but I need people to email me funny stories of times where they discovered something they thought was normal was not normal to the general public, because it always makes me laugh. So send it in, loopcast@catholicvote.org. So we're going to have an interesting show on Friday. And Josh, we trust you. We trust you. We believe in you.
Yeah, we're handing it to you, Josh.
Josh is getting the reins on Friday, and that might be enough to get people to tune in.
I like how you're trying to pretend like this is reckless. Okay, brother.
He's not pretending, Josh.
In the debate. Huh? I was running the show.
It's true.
The debate.
It's true, Josh. It's true. It's true. It's like how I imagine parents going away for the weekend for the first time with their kids is kind of like, and you're like, here's some frozen pizza, don't burn it down. It's just, I'm sure they'll do great.
I was Generation X, so that was like every night for us.
So we're gonna do Josh and Tinfoil Tom on Friday. I will be off. Erica will be off.
Tom Higgy in the comments.
So, what?
My friend in high school didn't know you could sharpen wooden pencils, so he'd throw them out when they got dull.
There you go. This is the kind of content I need.
That's awesome.
This is what I'm here for. Shout out Tom Higgy.
Yeah, we might have some gold here.
That's what I'm saying. I think we might get some heat. If we get good ones, I'm going to read them off on the next episode. I'm back, so that's going to be awesome. I have a lot of emails piling up, by the way. Also, shout out to the guy who emailed calling me a coward. We reconciled. And actually had a great conversation. Yeah, we reconciled. It's awesome. It's like, this is podcasting right here. It's like, you get new perspectives, you learn, you get to understand each other. It was cool. Honestly, shout out to that guy, legend.
I'm just waiting for who's the guy that always hated me.
Oh yeah, prolific Josh hater is my favorite.
Yeah,
this guy's my
not
favorite.
Anywhere because he knew I was coming back. So he's the chicken. He left. He wouldn't come. He didn't show his face.
I always go back to the Rick Ross quote: "If you ain't got haters, you ain't popping." And I think that applies to this. There's this guy.
I don't remember his name. Whatever.
Yeah, we don't need to name him. Prolific Josh hater, like to the point where he'll go away for a little while and then he'll come back and say, "Turn Josh's microphone off." And then he said he especially liked the episode where it was just me and Erica because you were not there. So I almost admire the commitment of this guy. It actually adds flavor to the show.
I love it.
So, okay. But yes, best way to help us out, leave a like in this episode right now. I see, we got over 100 people hanging out in this chat. If you guys leave a like, then we could have 100 likes in an episode. It would help us out a ton. Appreciate it. Leave us reviews, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Pray for our special intention again, not to bring us down, but really serious special intention. If you guys could just offer your prayers for that today, really appreciate it. Use the power of this community.
Hail Mary for it.
Yes. And so also email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. But obviously, best way, and Brian said it better than I could, champions. Become a Catholic Vote champion. It's the only way we're able to do this. Only reason we're able to do this show. So you can join us at CatholicVote.org/champions. That's where you can do that. But pray for us too. Loopcast, everyone at Catholic Vote, everyone involved, you can pray for us. St. Thomas More, Our Lady of Guadalupe, and St. Fidelis, pray for us. And Josh, you get the reins on Friday.
Have fun.